children's daycare. You will hear a man and a woman talking about daycare for their children. Before you listen again, you have 30 seconds to read questions 1 to 5.
Hi, Sanjeet. How are you?
Pretty well, Angela. Tom won't be here for another 10 minutes. Shall we have coffee while we're waiting?
Why not? How's your family?
Not too bad, except my son Arav had a cold last week and then my wife Navreet caught it.
Oh, dear. My daughter Zoe had a temperature this morning, and I wasn't sure whether to send her to daycare. But my husband's away in Toronto, and I can't take any more time off myself.
I guess kids get all kinds of things at daycare.
I don't know. They also build up resistance there. By the way, I'm sending out invitations for Zoe's birthday party. How do you spell Arav?
Arav.
Thanks. I've never heard the name before. What does it mean?
Peaceful or wise? It's popular in India because the film stars Twinkle Khanna and Akshay Kumar called their son Arav. What does Zoe mean?
It's the Greek form of Eve, which was my mother's name. It means life.
Nice. Navreet and I have put Arav's name down at a daycare center in East Lindsey, but we've heard a few odd things about it, so we're looking elsewhere. What's Zoe's daycare like?
Pretty good. My son went there for 2 years, and he survived.
If you don't mind my asking, what does it cost?
It varies. If you provide things yourself, like diapers and snacks, it's reasonable, around $30 a day. But if the center provides everything, it starts to add up and can go as high as $50.
I see.
Also, there are quite a few hidden costs.
Such as?
Well, the parents are kind of competitive. If a child has a birthday, Mom or Dad is expected to bring a snack for the whole room. The daycare is divided into rooms by age. Right now, Zoe's in Penguins. Sometimes I think parents spend a lot of time and money on those birthday snacks.
Once Navreet's back at work, she may well be too busy.
Absolutely. Also, if you set a pickup time but get there 15 minutes late, the center fines you $5 and $5 more for every quarter hour thereafter.
That's a bit steep, especially if you were just caught in traffic.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have 30 seconds to read questions 6 to 10.
So, tell me about the center in East Lindsey.
At first, I was impressed. It's spotless throughout, and the staff seems caring and responsible. I like the fact there's a decent amount of space, especially outdoors. However, I'm worried that the children aren't explicitly taught anything. All they do is play. Sure, Arav's only 1, but in an 8-hour day, there's a lot he can learn.
At Zoe's daycare, there is some structure to the week and some tuition. In Penguins, Monday is alphabet day, and Wednesday is numbers. In Tigers, Monday's computer day, and Wednesday's music.
Computer day?
Yeah. Parents have to provide tablets for their children when they turn 2. Another of the hidden costs I was telling you about.
Right.
But there's one good thing at Zoe's daycare. You're not charged if your child's off sick for a day. And as long as you give notice, you can take your child out for holidays, which again, you don't pay for. Many centers will only allow a 1-month fee-free break in a year.
What's the hygiene like?
Good enough. The kids do get things in their hair, which is a bit embarrassing. But supermarkets stock shampoo, and parents are contacted as soon as there's an outbreak.
Would you say the center kept parents well informed?
Yes, I would. There you go. A reminder about Zoe's birthday. Her snack can't contain peanuts because a boy in penguins has an allergy.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
A very small house. You will hear a woman being interviewed on the radio about living in a very small house. Before you listen, you have 30 seconds to read questions 11 to 15.
Welcome to today's show, coming to you from the home of Charlotte Williams. Good morning, Charlotte.
Morning, Simon.
Thanks for letting us into your home, which I believe has been inundated with guests recently.
Yes, I held my birthday party here.
Surely that was a squeeze, given your whole house is 8 square meters, about the size of my kitchen.
The party was in the garden.
I understand there's been an upsurge in interest in the tiny house movement.
That's right. Even Oprah has interviewed some of its devotees. We're no longer the weirdos at the end of the street.
But you were for some time, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I'm sorry to say I've had unpleasant text messages, rubbish strewn across my lawn, and rats put into my water tanks.
Goodness.
But you know, when I was a kid, people used to smoke in doctors' waiting rooms and on airplanes. Once on a flight to LA, I practically choked. My mother said crossly, "Settle down, it's only smoke." Now, of course, no one smokes on airplanes, and my mother is the first person to tell anyone off who lights up in a surgery.
So your mother's one of your fans?
I wouldn't say that exactly. Anyway, she lives in France. In my opinion, in the developed world, we all consume too much. I mean, in 1945, the average house in this city for a 5 to 7 person family was 111 square meters. 2 generations later, it's twice that size, while the family has only 3.5 to 4 people.
I note you say in the developed world. Perhaps an immigrant might still think you're weird. After all, isn't the American dream to think big?
Yes, one criticism leveled at me is that my lifestyle is anti-American. It's true that while working in Mozambique and Vietnam, I was inspired by my neighbors who used few resources.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have 30 seconds to read questions 16 to 20.
In Mozambique, people use far less water and electricity than here. That's when I started to live without a fridge or a shower like the locals. I washed in a basin of water, which I still do.
I don't think I could live without a shower.
In Vietnam, many of my neighbors didn't have a kitchen, but cooked and ate outside. This meant there was life in the streets. Here, my kitchen consists of 2 elements and that basin. And as you know, my party was outside. Also, in my part of Ho Chi Minh City, children generally slept in one bedroom. Indeed, children do share more when they're in small spaces, and they're less likely to acquire all the junky toys that fill up many American homes.
But you live alone, Charlotte, and the climate here is rather different.
Sure, my son's grown up and my partner lives in Chicago, although he visits often. The climate is cold here, but my heating bill is low because this is a small space. I do still need quilts and winter clothes, which I store under my bed. However, I own 2 coats, while my sister's got 10.
If you don't mind my saying so, Charlotte, isn't 8 square meters rather cramped? Haven't you had to give up all kinds of things?
Firstly, I have a great view of trees from my bed, so I feel part of nature, of the great expanse of nature. When I lived in a larger house, all I could see were other large houses. Honestly, I haven't given up anything. Every single item I now own has to be functional and beautiful. I don't keep anything out of guilt because it was a present or I paid a lot for it. I had 4,000 possessions before moving here. Now, I've got 400.
What other savings have you made?
I didn't pay much for this property, so I'm mortgage-free, which means I can work part-time. Without a doubt, the greatest saving I've made is of time. I clean my house for 1 hour a week. In the past, I was a slave to chores and maintenance. Most people think I live in a tiny house out of poverty or fanaticism, when really it's through choice. I'm just getting on with life.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3. You will hear a conversation. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. So, Jatinder and Ali, how did you deal with culture shock when you first came here to study?
Well, Katerina, when I first arrived in the UK, I was just so excited to be living in a foreign country away from my parents that I just didn't really notice anything at first. How about you, Ali?
Yeah, same here. That's quite typical, isn't it? Everything seems new and fascinating. But after this initial enthusiasm wears off, all the new experiences may begin to overwhelm you. Things that you found exciting at first may now seem strange and a little frightening. Even minor differences, such as being unable to buy your usual brands of various products, can add to the sense of strangeness.
Yes, that's right. Then you may start to experience sudden mood changes and strong reactions, feeling lost, disoriented, and even irritated and resentful. Most of all, you may wish you were back among the familiar people and places at home. All international students can experience culture shock in some form, even those coming from countries with very similar lifestyles to those in the UK. It is important to understand that this reaction is entirely normal and that it will pass.
Okay. So, what suggestions do you have for me?
Well, I made sure that I arrived early. I got here about 10 days before most of the other students, so that I could settle in before things got busy. Many universities run special induction programs for international students in the week before term begins. A typical induction program provides a tour of the college or university, an overview of its facilities and how to use them, help with registering for your academic program, and social events where you can meet other students and staff. This can help you to start to get used to your new environment.
Yeah, I heard about those, but too late, unfortunately. Jatinder, did you go on an induction course like Ali?
No, I wish I had, but my parents wouldn't let me go a day sooner than absolutely necessary. It was very annoying.
Every university has counsellors who can give you practical advice on adjusting your new environment. These people have special training in offering advice and support, and they understand the challenges you face. They can listen to you sympathetically, offer practical suggestions, and refer you to other professionals if necessary. Your personal tutor and the staff in the international office of your college or university can also be helpful.
Have you heard about the buddy or mentoring system? Students who have been at the university or college for a longer period give advice to new arrivals and are available for help and guidance throughout the year. There is information on schemes such as these at the Students' Union, or the International Student Association will help you become involved. I used the system when I arrived and found it really opened some doors socially. You know, I got to meet lots of people, like Ali, right?
Right, Katerina. I think it's also important to keep in touch with home. Use the telephone, email and conventional mail to keep in contact with your friends and family at home.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions.
In larger towns or cities with large international communities like this one, you may be able to find people from your country. Spend some time with them. Many international students find that it helps to make contact with people from a similar background because they understand what you're going through. Spending time with people from your country can also be a relaxing break from the strangeness of the UK. You can speak your own language, eat your own foods and talk about what is going on back home.
Yes, and don't forget that the university has a variety of cultural societies, as well as an active international students association. Ask at the Student Union. They may also have information about national or cultural groups outside the institution.
Another thing you should try to do is to keep healthy and active. Make an effort to exercise regularly. You will feel better, and it can also be a good way to meet people. Eat a balanced diet and find a shop that sells food from your part of the world, so that you can enjoy familiar meals when you want them.
That's a really good idea. I'll sign up at the University Sports Centre this afternoon.
I don't know whether you believe in God, but if you do, remembering your faith can be helpful and comforting. If you follow a religion and worship regularly at home, you can keep this up while you're in the UK. It can provide a sense of stability and be a link to your life at home. Every major religion in the world is represented here, and most large cities have Muslim, Hindu, Sikh and Buddhist centres, as well as synagogues and churches of all denominations. The Student Union keeps a list of places of worship.
I'm not religious, but I do see your point. So there's plenty I can do. Practical things, I mean. And above all, I need to remind myself that culture shock is normal and temporary.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a presentation on an online course. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Welcome to this presentation on our online course, An Introduction to Electronics, which runs over 10 weeks and starts on 8th of May. Let me just say at the beginning that if you cannot make this date, please send me an email about the next course, and I will send you a list of future dates. My email is the front of your brochures. Now, let me tell you something about the course. Based upon our popular 2-day overview of electronics course, this new online course will introduce you to the basic ideas behind electronic circuits. The course will consist of 10 units each, of which will involve around 5 hours of study. The course is designed to act both as an introductory course and as a refresher course. After taking the course, you should have a good idea of how electronic systems work and how they are made. In particular, the course focuses on the design of a hi-fi amplifier. The course is limited to analog electronics, where signals are represented by continuously variable voltages, and will not cover digital electronics, where signals are represented by discrete numbers. Students should normally have a reasonable proficiency in school maths and science. Study to GCSE level is sufficient for most of the course, though study to A level will enable a full understanding of the more advanced topics. Students on the course will be supplied with a copy of Terry Fitt's Fundamentals of Electronics. This will be used for directed reading, assignments and further study. It also serves as a useful reference source. The student should have PC available and a basic knowledge of Windows in order to use the simulation software from the CD-ROM that comes with this book. Now, who is this course designed for? This course is intended for individuals with little prior knowledge of electrical or electronic engineering who want to get a feeling for the subject, and for individuals whose knowledge is rusty or out of date. A previous exposure to basic science and maths at school will be assumed. Maximum benefit will accrue to those who have attended higher education in a technical subject or who have experience in a related area. Typical attendees may include those in jobs which bring them into contact with electronics, such as draftspersons, PCB designers, production and assembly personnel and software designers, those working with electronic products, such as managers and salespersons, those coming into electronics from a related field, such as scientists or mathematicians, and those simply curious to find out about this all-pervasive technology. The benefits of this course are that, first, it gives you a quick insight into modern electronics. It also puts emphasis on practical devices and systems. Unlike many other courses, no prior knowledge is assumed, but previous exposure to school-level science and maths is assumed. Fourthly, it can be used as a refresher course. Fifth, there is the benefit of getting hands-on simulations, and finally, all delegates completing the course will receive a University of Oxford Certificate of Completion. The course will be presented by Brian Williams, who started his career working as an electronic engineer for British Aerospace. Brian then became a lecturer and has taught electronics at Oxford University and Jesus College for longer than he cares to admit. He is also an active consultant and researcher. Brian is a dynamic lecturer and particularly enjoys teaching introductory level courses and interacting with students. Now, finally, let me just quickly go through the course content. Please remember that this course is intended for individuals with limited prior knowledge of electrical or electronic engineering. Unit 1 looks at electronic systems, including an introduction to the idea of signals represented by voltages. Wires used to transfer signals and voltage from one place or box or component to another, and boxes or components manipulating voltages, particularly amplifying them. Unit 2 takes a look at Ohm's law, the linear relationship of voltage and current, and the concept of resistance. It also looks at resistors and resistor networks. Unit 3 focuses on op-amps, providing an introduction to the ideal op-amp and its applications. The next slide tells us that Unit 4 is concerned with capacitors, and AC circuits. The theory and applications of capacitors and their use in transient and AC circuits. Unit 5 looks at frequency response and filters, including both passive and active filters. Unit 6 takes a look at magnetism, inductors and transformers. Looking at this next slide, we can see that Unit 7 covers RL and RLC circuits, including tuned filters and crossover networks. Unit 8 is entitled An Introduction to Semiconductors. It covers diodes and rectifiers, both theory and applications. This unit also looks at special purpose diodes. Unit 9 covers transistors, particularly bipolar transistors, including theory and typical circuits. The final unit, Unit 10, is a review unit with a little look at further applications.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
By thirst, I'm inspired by worth. I desire your worst, so you can just hide while I work. I ain't tired, you first. I'll write a second, third verse about the lies you go disperse. You never did shit.